Everybody, get it. Okay, let's let me read this story. Here we go. My best friend, Margaret, recently moved away after living here for 5 years. I'd spent 10 years before that trying to convince her to move here from New York City because I thought I knew her better than she knew herself. So she finally did move here, but then she left for Los Angeles, and I felt like I was being left for the quarterback of the high school football team. You know, the guy who's really sexy but has nothing between his ears, and you later run into him at your high school reunion bloated with bad knees and destined to fall off the edge of the country due to global warming. How dare she leave me for him? I realized upon reflection that I wasn't upset that she was leaving me as much as I was sad that she left this town. This gorgeous and beautiful town. Oh, Louisville, I could never love another half as much as I love you. In 2008, we were living in a small island town in southeast Alaska, where I decided to go to graduate school. If LA is the high school quarterback, Ketchikan, Alaska is like your college boyfriend, a sexy philosophy major who drinks too much and is prone to major darkness, so you spend half the year trying to cheer him up. I love that town too. I got married in that town, but I knew if I stayed too long, I'd go dark along with it. I applied to graduate schools across the US, with half a mind to live on a sailboat somewhere, but was accepted inland to the University of Louisville and the University of South Carolina. I had never been to Louisville or Columbia and felt relatively neutral about which place to go. We visited Louisville and stayed in a shitty hotel that overlooked the waterside. One of the grad students gave me a tour of St. Matthews and said, "And over here is the mall you will shop at." We found the Highlands on our own and thought, okay, we could live here. The fact that our tour at the University of South Carolina took us past the Strom Thurmond Center for Fitness sealed it for us. Louisville it was. We moved here with fairly low expectations, the same way you do when you run into a man at the grocery store and realize you went to preschool together, and you think, what the hell, I'll go out on a date with you. At the very least, you'll be able to reminisce over your continued love of graham crackers, apple juice, and the time a kid threw up in class, which started a chain reaction of vomiting that ended in that teachers just coming in and rolling out sheets of plastic to contain the mess. You see, although I had never been to Louisville, I was conceived in Flemingsburg, Kentucky, and born in Maysville, and spent the next 4 years of my life in Moorhead before moving to Ohio in 1985. So my parents could attend graduate school. I'd never been back. My parents met in Eastern Kentucky when they both rented tenement farmhouses next to each other in the late 70s. My dad grew up on a farm in Eastern Kentucky where both sides of his family had lived for generations. My mom was born and raised in DC, but her paternal grandfather was from Dawson Springs. My grandmother worked for Southern Bell Telephone Company in Louisville when she was 19 years old, and my dad went to kindergarten on State Street in Clifton. My great-grandmother died of tuberculosis while at the Waverly Hills Sanatorium, and my great-grandfather died at the VA off of Zorn. Kentucky was in my bloodstream, whether I realized it or not. My grandmother, having lived in Cincinnati for 40 years plus, still hung a Kentucky state flag outside of her house. A die-hard Cats fan, when I told her I was accepted at U of L, she said, "Well, any school that has Rick Pitino as a coach is all right with me." As someone who could care less about basketball, I shrugged. Who cares about this guy, Rick Pitino? But I took her word for it, Louisville would be all right with me. I slept around a lot before Louisville. And by that, I mean I had lived in 22 different houses or apartments in 28 years, 4 states, 4 countries. Amos and I had already lived in 10 different homes together in the 6 years since we first started dating. So when we moved to Louisville, we had no intention of settling down. It just wasn't our style. A rolling stone gathers no moss, or in this case, bluegrass. We had a friend in Alaska that completely and totally coincidentally owned a house in Louisville and offered to rent it to us for $250 a month.
Wow.
We'd never seen the place, but for that kind of money, who cares? When we pulled up to that little shotgun on Pope Street in late July of 2009, I felt like I was on that date with my preschool friend when I realized, oh, I was gonna love you a long time, maybe forever. Later that day, Amos and I were unpacking our van and carrying his massive record collection and 55 instruments up the stairs into the house when these two guys in their early 60s approached us on the sidewalk. Are y'all musicians? We're going to a party next door and there will be lots of musicians there if you want to come. Within 5 minutes, Amos had picked up a guitar. We met 20 people and away we went. To say we were loved right away does not quite capture what happened. We were consumed by friends at that party. And this is what I now understand is Louisville. The town is easy to love when you're loved so easily. That group of 20 grew to 40, and my fellow classmates in graduate school, also transplants from other towns and states, were shocked we'd met so many people so quickly. That, and the fact that all of our new friends were 20 to 30 years older than us, had much better weed, and treated Amos like he was the second coming of Elvis, or in this case, Tim Crockett, a Louisville musician who had died 3 months before we arrived, leaving a musical, magical hole in the shape of a man with a deep voice with stories to tell. Louisville loves a good storyteller, right? In the years that followed, my 2 children came home to that little house on Pope Street, and we eventually moved up the road. Both of my parents moved here at separate times, with the same desire to flee Ohio, where J.D. Vance is really from, which is why he's so lame. They wanted to be close to us, but also to get back to where we once belonged. At what point does a town become your hometown? At what point does it weave into your DNA? There's something about this place that fits like a glove. A love glove. Gross? That sounds like a comment. No, a lovely glove that was made just for us. Margaret moved to town in 2018, and within a week also made 20 friends, which grew to 40 in a month, because that's what happens in this town. She stayed for 5 years and left because, well, I'm not quite sure, but I believe her when she tells me it's complicated. Margaret's new town is on fire and sliding into the ocean as we speak. She's been there 2 years now and made just as many friends, 2. Just as I predicted, the quarterback she left us for blew out his knees. I'll give it some time, she'll come around, but I'm not going anywhere. At this point, my love affair with Louisville has morphed into a long-term marriage. Sure, we only have sex like twice a year. Both times during Derby. But boy, do I love coming home.